Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A quick reminder of our top stories now. Panic in CHIBOK local government area of Borno State as Boko Haram terrorists attack Korungilum community, burning down houses as residents scamper to safety. President MUHAMMADU Buhari restates commitment to rescuing children and other Nigerians still in custody of Boko Haram insurgents on the eve of the Dapchi abduction anniversary. Federal government steps up surveillance at airports to prevent importation of coronavirus, intensifies screening at major entry points in the country. And Chinese health officials publish first details of more than 44,000 cases of COVID-19 in the biggest study since the outbreak of the virus. Plus, business, sports, and news from Abuja, the FCT, and later international news from our London studios. Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Do subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Android, Fire and Roku TV. Apart from the assurance of improved security from the president, which we brought to you earlier, he has also given another assurance today, this time in Kaduna, where he said that all government financial transactions will now be done in the open. President MUHAMMADU Buhari gave this assurance at the passing out parade of the Detectives Inspectors Course 5 of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the EFCC. The passing out parade climaxes months of intensive military training and grooming of the cadets in preparation for a career as EFCC operatives. President Buhari says that with the various reforms agenda implemented by his administration, his aim is to ensure that no government financial transactions is done in secret and all are subjected to public scrutiny. According to him, various national reforms and collaborative efforts with international organizations are designed to institutionally strengthen anti-corruption agencies in Nigeria.
281 cadets of the Detective Inspector Course 5 of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission filing out after 6 months of intensive military training at the Nigerian Defense Academy in Kaduna State. The President, Muhammadu Buhari, is here with the Governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai, and the Chairman of the EFCC, IBRAHIM. In line with military procedure, the President first inspects the parade, which is then followed by a march past by the cadets. The chairman of the EFCC is mindful that the task of fighting corruption will not be easy, but assures the president of his team's resolve to living up to expectations.
Your Excellency, our mandate at the EFCC, we say, go and kill corruption. I didn't hear any other instruction.
The president, on his part, admonishes the graduates to dedicate themselves to the cause, which is stamping out corruption in Nigeria and ensuring that all corrupt persons do not go unpunished.
My resolve is to ensure that the reforms are deepened such that there will be no hiding place for corrupt persons and proceeds of corruption. As law enforcement officers, I expect that we have attained high endurance level and the intellectual capacity to investigate and EFCC's prosecutorial powers. Nigeria have great confidence in you.
EFCC's partnership with the NDA began in 2016 to reject the training regimen of the Commission with the purpose of infusing a high level of discipline and integrity. Hopefully, the cadets have learned these qualities and will translate them into their work.
It may interest you to know that the war against corruption peaked in 2006 under the leadership of MAGU, the acting chairman Economic and Financial Crimes Commission.
You're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, reaching you live from Lagos. Let's cross over to our Abuja studios now, where Linda Kigbe is standing by to take us through a couple of more stories. Very interesting indeed. Good to see you, Linda.
Hello, Gimba. Good to see you too. Now we begin here in the nation's capital with the sad story of the murder of an assistant director attached to the State House, Mrs. Letitia Nankang Dagan. Mrs. Dagan was said to have been killed in her apartment in Galadimawa, Abuja last night, shortly after she returned from work. The permanent secretary in the State House said she left her office in the presidential villa at about 8 p.m., while the incident reportedly happened around 11 p.m. He adds that the police are already investigating the murder and will fish out the killers. Meanwhile, the permanent secretary of the Nasarawa State Ministry of Works, Jibrin Giza, who was kidnapped last weekend, has been released by his abductors. Mr. Giza was released today after spending 2 days in captivity. The Assistant Commissioner of Police Operations, Nasarawa State Command, who confirmed his release to Channels Television, said no ransom was paid, pointing out that he was released as a result of sustained pressure from the police. Increased net welfare gains from economic activities is the target of the United Nations SDGs Goal 12. A significant reduction in pollution and use of resources are also expected to be achieved by 2030. In continuation of our series on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, our correspondent Diary Idowu reports on whether or not responsible consumption and production efforts are substantial enough to meet the deadlines set by the United Nations.
Do more and better with less. That is the target of Goal 12 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. More than 1 billion tons of food is wasted every year, while almost 2 billion people go hungry or undernourished. In some Nigerian communities, 20 to 30% of total grain production are lost at different stages. 30 to 50% of root and tuber are also lost, with a substantial amount recorded during storage.
This is a perishable product. We don't have where to store it. When you bring it in the market, you didn't sell. That is a condemned product.
Food waste and loss is really an all-inclusive problem that affects everyone in the value chain. So this is why eliminating it requires an all-inclusive solution that looks across the global food system and identify where the biggest losses occur and provide incentives for solving the problem at the root.
To reduce agricultural waste, this organization is training farmers on eco-friendly organic farming for quality food security. In Kuje, an Abuja suburb, these farmers are learning more sustainable ways of improving their business. They say they're open to more ideas.
Farmers will have more yield than the other years they've been farming. For instance, like inorganic fertilizer, when you over-apply, it affects your crops.
Most of us will farm, but we don't know the effectiveness in farming. But with this one coming to create awareness to us, so from this next season, at least most of us will improve on our farming system.
Away from the farmlands, rapid urbanization, population growth, and poor waste management are also staring governments in commercial cities in the face.
The human population is growing, and so is its footprints. The accelerated pace of global consumption in the past decades means that government across the world must find ways of dealing with the dramatically increased volume of waste. In Lagos State alone, 13,000 tons of waste are generated daily.
There are efforts by governments and individuals to manage solid waste across the nation. In Enugu, where 2,000 metric tons are generated daily, new business opportunities are springing up.
Plastic all over the place. I mean, their drinks, their food stuff, and the restaurants will, package the food in plastic. And we have to make everybody responsible, beginning from those who manufacture it and now move on to those who consume.
With the goal deadline set for 2030, a reduced waste generation is expected through recycling, eco-friendly food production, safe reuse, And if these efforts in place are improved and sustained, Nigeria may be on the right track of meeting the set target. Dari Idowu, Channels Television News.
We're now being joined in the news at 10 by Professor Kenife, a macroeconomic policy analyst, to give us further insights into just how well Nigeria is doing in attaining Goal 12 of the SDGs. Professor Kenife, you're welcome to the news at 10.
Thank you for inviting me.
So we just watched this report. Now, the requirement set for achieving economic growth and sustainable development, is by reducing our ecological footprints. How well do you think we're doing as a country? Do you think we're taking
We have challenges when you look at the various performance indicators. As mentioned, 30 to 70% of what we produce. We are the biggest producer of food in Africa and one of the 5 in the world. But 30 to 70% never make it into the food chain. So that's a big challenge for us. And that is at the bottom of the inflation that kept on, the food sub-index is 14.8. And that is what keeps pushing up the inflation. So we need to deal with that by making sure we put more resources on processing of food, on preservation and transportation to avoid the waste. The waste is colossal. But we're not as bad as the world in general. Actually, African countries, we're a lot better. If you look at America, for example, 320 million people, they consume 60% of world production. And if China, with 1.4 billion population, consumes per capita of what America consumes in food, we need 6 planets the size of Earth to actually cope with food production. But have you said that, we still get hit on the ranking, obviously, because the ranking is not particular for 12, but is for the whole 17.
So how do we track our performance in terms of sustainable consumption and production and even cutting out this waste that you're talking about?
The good news is actually that the strategy has been mainstreamed into the economic growth and our economic growth ERGP program. But the results have to come out for you to actually see how far we are doing.
When you say mainstream, has it trickled down to the people, to the masses?
It's captured in the budget and also included in the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan. So which is the main important thing, mainstreaming the SDG into the plan is very, very critical. But there are other areas of it. For example, the renewable energy aspect of it, energy efficiency. Renewable energy is about 20% globally, and we are moving, steadily. And in terms of energy efficiency, we have our targets. We have our national action plan, or 2030 action plan, sustainable energy for all, where we are hoping to double the energy efficiency. Of course, globally, we are looking at a huge loss of about if you change all the bulbs into the energy saving bulbs, you will save $120 billion. So that is part of our energy efficiency program. And some institutions are beginning to respond, but it's a big target.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Kenife, for joining us on the News at 10. Pleasure. When the News at 10 returns, Nigeria's headline inflation soars above 12% for the first time in nearly 2 years. That's some business news. Join us again.